Probably 10 or 12.
I was gonna say 12 probably.
Something like that, probably.
It's out there where on Uncle Carl's place, 'cause we didn't move out there till I was in the 6th grade. I probably 13 maybe. I had to hold this cow's tail and we was chasing back toward the house. We was in the timber and she went on one side of the tree and I went on the other, and that's when the tail broke. Well, I think she kind of dodged around the tree, and Carl may have been out there, but cattle was out, I think, and we finally got him, and of course, chasing him back to the house. That was a free ride, you know, as long as you hanging on the tail.
She had quite an accent, and I remember when she first came, it was quite a deal to Aunt Geraldine. We you know, 'cause she was different, she talked different and everything, and everybody kind of good-naturedly, but
Yeah.
kind of kidded her and everything.
And Melvin still does. But that's right, you know, her accent was really, and she'd
The
say
accent, and
aunt instead of aunt, you know, and I don't know. There were several words.
she knew nothing about agriculture or how we lived out here in these small towns. She was a
City,
big
city,
town,
from
city girl.
Richmond.
Richmond.
But she just had no idea what small towns were like. And the way we were friendly and stuff, you know, out there they didn't, you know, just wasn't used to that.
When they came back here, as I remember, it was the first time, they were out at our house, and we had a medicine cabinet. Just as you came in the kitchen door there, right around the corner, there was a medicine cabinet. And I remember her opening that medicine cabinet, and pills just fell out all over the place, and her just, oh! She was naive
Yeah.
about things
Yeah.
that we took for granted.
Yeah.
And
Different world for her.
yeah. Uncle Ernie, where did the family live when you were born?
Right up there.
In Uncle Hank's place.
Yeah. And I started the school, I was, I guess, 7, for part of a year, and then we moved out to Poplar City,
Uh-huh.
I think all 4 of us kids was born in there.
which was 10 miles farther out east of town, east of Havana. See, that was in grade 1, and then we was there for 6 years, and Grandpa sold the place, and Uncle Carl moved to town, so we moved up then on Uncle Carl's place, which is a little farther north.
It was a country school,
One room.
one room, one teacher.
Rankinfield.
Did you have to walk to school for the
Oh,
most
yeah.
part?
Yeah,
How far was it?
mile, just a mile east of that house there. And then when we moved to Poplar City, we had to walk, 2 miles or more.
I remember Uncle Hank, and he was quite a talented guy,
Yeah, he was.
and his wife was Aunt Minnaw,
Yeah.
and as I remember it, she came from Germany.
She
She
came
did.
from Germany.
And I remember Uncle Hank used to make grandfather clocks.
Right.
Well, he bought most of it. He made this piece of furniture right here. He worked at the Havana Plow Shop before he got
That's Mom
married.
and Dad's.
That used to be Grandma and Grandpa's place, and then when Grandma died, when they moved to town, Uncle Hank bought that farm there. Like you say, he was talented. He sharpened his own plowshare, and he'd done his own maintenance work, and he did woodwork. And,
But they never had any children.
No.
he didn't bring her back from Germany. She came over here, and she's working as a maid for some down on the south side of town.
She was
Now, whether he got acquainted with her through the church or what, I don't know.
well, I always pronounced her name Minnaw.
Yeah.
How did you spell?
She spelled it Minnna,
Okay.
but it's Minnie in our. But we always called her Aunt Minna because that's the way she signed it.
I remember he had built a pond
Mhm.
in back of the house there, and you could go out there and take a boat. He had a little rowboat out there.
He took that windmill down and moved it out to the pond, and that's how they kept the pond.
He'd just run water out.
Run water, and he shaped the pond out of sand, and then he bought bentonite clay to line the bottom with to hold the water, and the windmill pumped the water.
What did he use that pond for?
Fish.
Just
fish.
the
They
fishing.
put fish in it.
Oh, he did. He stocked it. Huh?
He stopped it.
Yeah. And he was the first one in Mason County to start raising Christmas trees.
What was the date when she came over?
I'd say before the war. And things were pretty bad in Germany then. That's why a lot of them people came over here.
We had already moved to Poplar City. That's where where we were when we had the worst depression. See, Grandpa and Aunt Minnie and Uncle Hank, they used to, the last ones to live in that house.
Yeah.
And Grandpa and Aunt Minnie then went to town to live, and Uncle Hank and Aunt Minna must have got married long about the depression time.
He told me that him and Minna would come to town, but they wouldn't eat an ice cream cone.
Now, this is a later picture of your family, all of you kids together.
Yeah.
One of the last pictures.
Probably, might have been the summer before. It seems to me like we all were down at New Salem for something, but
Christian church here in Havana was Grandma's church. Church was a very big part of your lives.
you know, it was hard to get into town. That was the one thing. Grandma and Grandpa all went to that church, and the folks went to that church. Because it was just, 10 miles was a long ways to come. But when we got older and things got better, then probably when I was,
15 or thereabouts.
yeah, or a little before.
I think it must have been Easter Sunday. We walked from Uncle Hank's, and I don't know whether the folks were with us or what. We walked north over to Route 136 and walked into church, and I think it was on an Easter Sunday morning.
That could be, see it.
But when we were out during the Depression, we had once in a while they'd have church over to schoolhouse on Sunday, but until after the war and we got up to
Got
Uncle
better
Carl-
transportation and everything.
When we finally got a Model A Ford that you could make the town and back,
Yeah,
well then,
yeah.
we was up on Uncle Carl's place
Yeah.
then.
And you just kept going to the church that your mother had been raised
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
No.
Well, in fact, Mom and Dad was married by the Christian minister. I think his name was Reverend Henry.
I
Mary,
got married during the war.
how did you meet Aunt Mary Helen?
Blind date. She mentioned Junior Munch, which was a good friend of mine in high school. That's after I got out of school and I had my car. He had a date with this girl, so we went over there and there wasn't nothing around on the street anywhere. So I
Yeah.
told Junior, you get me a date or this car's going back to Savannah. And if you're either going with me or you're gonna walk. She went into the theaters. Mary Helen was her friend. Talked Mary Helen coming out, and we went to Logan County Fair.
Of course, we don't live very far from Abraham Lincoln, New Salem,
Yeah.
and there's history behind him and Ann Rutledge.
Mm-hmm.
Is her family related?
Distant relation, yes. I can't tell you just exactly, but it's distant relation. I worked at Caterpillar a year before I went to service, and then I went back to Caterpillar. They guarantee you your job, so I went back to Caterpillar after I got back, and we ran an apartment in Pekin. I didn't particularly like working inside, so when I got the GI Bill and went down and started working on the farm with Harvey. Later bought in with Grandpa Rutledge. I stayed in reserves because I didn't want to lose my rank in case I got pulled back in. They pulled me back in for the Korean War. That's when Uncle Melvin come out and filled in, and then he went to work for Tom Kirby when I got back.
Your dad was always a farmer at that point. Sand farms, not real prosperous.
No, no fertilizer, no sand farm, and like I say, no electricity, no water conveniences. Everything they did by hand. Dad never owned a tractor. He loved horses, and I tried my best to get him to. He could have bought a B John Deere, I think, for $690, but he never did go for it. I don't imagine he had the money in the first place, and he loved horses, and
I would think just getting rid of the horses probably was his
and he
big-
was getting by the way it was. So even though it was running to a dead end, when we lived at Poplar City, it was a pretty good sized farm. But Uncle Carl's was what?
200 maybe.
About 200 maybe. Wheat and corn and cowpeas. They didn't have soybeans just mainly then. They came in late, but corn and wheat and soybeans were mainly, and hay. You had to have hay for the horses.
Right.
Rye on some of the
Well, that was planted a lot for pasture for the cattle too.
cattle, hogs. They usually hired a truck to come in and
There was a guy in the neighborhood that would kind of wait till everybody had something to ship, and then he'd take them all at once.
yeah, he'd take a load. And the dairy calf, we never had beef cattle. We always had dairy cattle, and Dad would usually veal the calves. And I remember the fellow would come around, and like you said, picking up a load. He may be there before daylight to pick up a calf. And the time he got around, got to Peoria.
Did he
oh
butcher
yeah,
him?
yeah, we went at all all the cured pork and everything like that. After I got older, he would let me stay out of school on Butcher Day. I think I managed to get a lot of help.
Yeah.
And then I learned to butcher, even got to where I could shoot the hogs, get them down.
And that was a treat
Mhm.
for you to have fresh meat.
Right, because everything was cured or cold packed. Cured ham. They would take these hams and put them in a little building which was road proof and so forth, and they would put salt, just piles of salt and some kind of sugar curing or something. But it was just salt to get the moisture out of that ham so it would keep. It would just put so much salt on it and draw the moisture out of it. And then they would hang it up, and you set a, either inside or outside, you would build a wooden fire, and the smoke would smoke the ham. They were so salty, that's why you were glad to get some fresh meat.
What'd you mostly hunt?
Well, rabbit and squirrel. And Popper City was a lot of timber. Uncle Carl only had about 10 acres or 15 maybe. Rabbits, we'd run them in a hollow log and take a piece of baling wire or take a stick, find out how far he was up the hollow log, and then cut a notch in and get him out. Dad never did do much. Well, he do squirrel and rabbit, but he never went duck hunting. He used to go down here and buy you a good mess of fish for $1 down at the fish market down here on the river.
I remember even when I was younger, carp was like a penny a pound or something like that.
Yeah.
And those river boats, you walk the plank out to the river
Yeah.
boat. The fella had a live well there. He'd take his dip net and get you out a big old carp and dress it right there.
Yeah.
And wrap it in a newspaper. Up under your arm you went up the hill. Uncle Hank and Uncle Bill, they were single. They used to go over Thompson Lake or Norris Farm over and shoot a boatload of ducks. You know, just shoot
Yeah.
till you got tired of shooting.
Havana was a town that you folks, pretty much all of you have been around to a certain extent your whole life. And we're coming up now on the sesquicentennial for Havana, the centennial back in 1953, and that was a big thing. I know Havana at one time was known for gambling.
Oh, definitely. Al
For
Capone
gambling.
even visited once in a while.
I remember they used to have slot machines everywhere,
Yeah.
and they'd have boxes so kids could get up and put nickels in slot machines. There was a big raid that made a lot of news back, I don't know, it was in the early 50s, but the FBI came in or the state police won,
It's probably before 50, I imagine.
because the local sheriff was in cahoots with all these
Yes.
guys. And I remember that.
It was an open town.
Wide
you might-
open,
yes,
wild
sir.
town. And years back, the river, that was a pretty rough place.
When Melba and her friend were working down at, Louise were working down at Springfield, they had an apartment, and the guy that owned, had an apartment upstairs. Anyway, when she said something about Havana, he said, "Oh, I used to go to that town."
A
Yeah.
lot of people
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
came over from Camp
Oh,
Alice.
yeah, the Havana they were soldier boys all over when it was over there.
And also, there was a CCC camp down southeast corner of town, too. The camp was here, but their main work area was out where the state tree nursery is. The CCC camp restored New Salem. And there was a camp at Petersburg, too. At
Yeah.
one time, this was supposed to have been the biggest inland fish market in the country. That Norse Farm was all lake over there, and there was fish were plentiful. And like you say, they would load a carload of fish.
Oh, yeah.
Came over from Camp
Oh,
Alice.
yeah, the Havana they were soldier boys all over when it was over there.
And also, there was a CCC camp down southeast corner of town, too,
Right
back
across from,
in the
down
30s.
there.
And they had a lot of them there then, too. And the camp was here, but their main work area was out where the state tree nursery is. That's where they did a lot. And then I think they even went to New Salem. The CCC camp restored New Salem. And there was a camp at Petersburg, too.
And Havana was a river town,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of industry came as a result of the river.
Mhm.
And I remember I've read accounts of train carloads full of fish.
Well,
And
they,
being-
at one time, this was supposed to have been the biggest inland fish market in the country. Well, that's what I hear. I can't prove it, but that's what they say.
Mostly carp.
They used to,
Then, yeah.
See,
then it was.
that Norse Farm was all lake over there, and there was fish were plentiful. And like you say, they would load a carload of fish out and ice it down. I've heard them do that too.
And when Vera and I were married, that's in 45, they had 5 fish markets down there on the river. Fish boats, live walkers.
And of course, we've had the industry, we've had the coal docks up here for years.
And the plow shops was down below. That was a big thing when
Yeah,
people used
back
to.
in the Depression, that was a
Yes.
good place for employment.
But there's not much in Havana anymore.
There isn't much anywhere. Mason City's going downhill, and everybody is driving to the bigger cities. They've got these good transportation. Everybody's got their own vehicle, and I go 4 miles to town of a morning, around 7:30, whatever, and I will meet 20 cars coming south while I'm driving 4 miles.
When I was a kid, coming to town on Saturday night was a really big thing. All the farmers came to town on Saturday night, and getting a parking place
Oh yeah,
on Main Street in Havana
impossible.
was hard. I know Uncle Junior was a cop in Havana for a little while. Oh, was that what he was? Well, I know we always wanted to check with Uncle Junior to see if there was a place to park. But you couldn't, traffic was be bumper to bumper
Yeah.
in Havana. That was the time when the farm women did their grocery shopping
Right.
for all week.
That's when you brought your eggs and cream to town.
Or-
Or you
or
could take $5.
You didn't get $20 back then.
No, $5 would buy a lot of groceries.
But you didn't buy a lot of stuff
Yeah.
either.
No.
Another
no.
thing I remember, like you say, you used to come to town and they'd visit, and you didn't think you're going home till midnight. And then along come the chain stores, and they closed at 10 o'clock. And my goodness, you ought to heard the people scream. They had to get their shopping done by 10 o'clock.
They called it a Havana Silverama.
Yeah.
When they gave away $100 silver dollars, and you had these little tickets for all the merchants had, and if you bought something,
They give you a
they
ticket.
gave you a ticket and you put your name on it. And then when everything closed up on Saturday night, they'd do a drawing, but you had to be present to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kept everybody in town.
In town.
They'd have somebody on a microphone, and they'd make a big thing of walking across the street with $100 silver dollars in a bag. And it was the biggest thing.
It was a big thing. I think Melvin did one time. Didn't you win some silver dollars?
Yeah,
I don't know what it was,
Yeah, but
50, not the 100. It wasn't the 100.
The stores stopped staying open on Saturday nights.
Yeah, that did it. That did.
They tried to change it to Friday.
Yeah, that didn't work.
And then after a while, people got more cars, and
Yeah.
coming to town wasn't such a big
No,
thing.
no.
Yeah.
I gotta tell one on you, Richie.
Uh-oh.
Your mom always went usually to the AP store and to buy her groceries.
Yeah.
And usually, sometimes, well, not usually, but sometimes she'd give them a check, you know, for the groceries. And one time, you was out on the street, you wanted some money. And she said, Rich, I don't have any money. And you said, go down to the AP store and give a check.
What a treat it was to have a quarter
Oh, yeah,
to
Yeah.
spend.
yeah.
And that's what I got usually, was a quarter on a Saturday
You
night.
surely hadn't got your quarter then.
When I stayed in town, went to high school, I was lucky if I had a quarter to spend all week.
Well, you stayed in town when you went to high school.
Yeah.
I stayed with Uncle Carl the first year, and if it hadn't have been for him, I'd have never gone to high school. He came out and talked to folks and me, and
That's right, you
and
wouldn't
then
have.
and then Roscoe and Gladys got married, and I stayed with them. And the school teacher out there in that area lived just across the street from them. And on Friday morning, I would ride out there with her and bring the folks' car in, and then go back home. Friday night.
Aunt Gladys never went to high school, but my mother, Ruby, did.
Yeah,
She's-
she stayed with some friends from the church down there, almost down to Hardy's down there. She
Yeah.
worked for the guy that run the Simcoe farm. What was his
Oh,
name?
Jones.
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 But when she lived down there, Shirley, like I say, just a little ways north of Hardy's down there, and the schoolhouse was up here on the hill where the water tower was, they would walk down there and eat and come back for their noon meal in an hour's time. She might have come home on weekends if the
Yeah.
folks was in town or
So.
something, but I know had it handy, I could go get the car and,
So you and my mother were the only two that graduated from high school in the family.
yeah, well, Don finally did.
Oh.
Yeah.
He finished his in the Navy.
What was Grandma and Grandpa's attitude towards school?
I think they wanted you to get through grade school, but from there on, it didn't make that much difference.
See, I was supposed to go to Easton High School, and of course they didn't have any bus routes or nothing. They got me tuition and they changed to Havana. I don't know whether Uncle Carl or Dad or who, but Easton paid tuition for me to come to Havana.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I should have gone to Easton School.
What was going to school like in those days?
Grade school?
Grade school.
Okay, we had one room, we had one teacher, she had all 8 grades and all the subjects in them grades. She
Yeah.
was the janitor, she come and built the fire,
Custodian and everything.
custodian, she swept out, anything in the school that teacher done. If we had any music and she could play the piano, she was the music teacher. Yeah, I only had one.
Most of them.
You had a man.
I had, Wilbur Wetner out there when we lived out in Poplar City.
That's all I ever had.
They were
Yeah.
unmarried.
Yeah, most of them.
Well, yeah, most of them had to have some kind of a college.
Couple years of high school.
I was gonna say at least 1 year or 2.
Yeah.
They didn't have to have 4 years of college.
No, 2 years, I think. But there was a time when you could go to high school and then go teach.
She would start out with the first grade of a morning, and they would come up there and read, and then the second grade and so forth. And then you would start with your math, and after usually your language and different things.
Now,
like
what were the others doing when she was?
Well,
Study.
you were supposed to be studying, but usually you was listening to what was going on up there. It was all open. The little ones could hear what the older ones was doing, and the older ones could hear. Everything was right up front of the building, one room,
It's like she'd say first grade reading, second grade reading. She'd go through all the readings. First grade math, second grade math, and then spelling.
15 or 20 maybe.
Yeah.
Not over that.
No.
In the school.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
the whole school. Well, I remember there was the Newport boys and the Hall kids and the Leishmans,
Nebelman kids.
Nebelman kids. We had probably maybe 20, just football in high school, 2 years. I didn't know anything to anybody the first year, and the second year I went out and Mom got after me and I had to quit. The third year I says, I'm gonna play football, so I did.
You've been a football fan your whole life.
Mainly, I suppose, 'cause I played football. That's the only sport. Out in the country schools, or maybe the next school 3 or 4 miles over, we might get together and have a mixed game or something.
Sports for girls at that point.
Oh, no,
Wasn't
no.
What did girls do for fun when the boys were playing sports?
Well, if we had a ball game at school, a lot of the girls would
Oh,
be
yeah,
playing.
Yeah.
We didn't always play ball, handy over the schoolhouse, and then whichever way they were going with the ball,
If you had a big snow, or not a snow, but a big snow, but a snow at school, we'd go out and make a great big ring, and we called that a
Awesome goose.
What?
Fox and geese.
fox and geese, yeah. Somebody was in the center, and that was the fox, and, he tried to get the geese, and,
I remember growing up, the most fun was playing hide and go seek.
yeah.
Hide and go seek was,
Yeah.
of course, we got together a lot at night. We always played it whenever we got together.
Yeah.
You got so you learned all the good hiding places.
Yeah.
And I remember taking an empty tractor tire and getting in it and roll it down the hill. You just go around and around and around.
I've never done that.
You've never done that?
No.
You ought to try it sometime.
Did we put that on tape,
What's that?
where I shot myself?
Yeah.
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 Okay,
That's all down.
I have to tell Aunt Wanda something here.
Go ahead.
What reminded me is you said you and Uncle Junior got married in 1953. I remember Aunt Wanda and Uncle Junior were coming out to our house shortly after you got married. I remember you guys were coming out, and I was playing out by the road, and I was kind of off the side of the road, and I think I kind of remembered that you were coming, and I was kind of waiting for you, you know? And here you come up the road, and I think you were sitting on Uncle Junior's lap. Because you were sitting right over next to him. And,
No.
and before you got up the hill, when you got kind of close to me, you scooted over. And that was one of the first times that I remember you coming out there as a married. I don't know if they have them anymore.
No,
And I don't know if they have them any other part of the country.
I don't know either, but they don't do that around here anymore.
They didn't chivalry us. We thought they would.
Well, some of them, they got pretty rough, but they'd usually wait, regardless of where the couple was, they'd try to surprise them, and the neighbors and everybody come in on them, and they'd liable to do most anything, bring shotguns and shoot in the air, and
Cowbells and make a lot of noise.
anything to make a bunch of noise.
And you was supposed to treat the people.
The other people brought in like sandwiches
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, I remember Uncle Hank's, when they chivalried him, they had a wash tub full of sandwiches, and two people went around the crowd, and you got to get your sandwiches out of that wash tub.
They had a wool blanket somebody give them, and somebody cut up some horsehair in that wool blanket. Well, that just ruined the blanket.
You know, they'd fix it so the bed would fall down when they
Yeah.
get in bed.
And somebody fixed your bed up the last time you got married.
Oh, yes. And she's standing right behind me.
Wasn't me.
What did I do?
You done something to the bed, I
Oh,
remember.
She just tore everything up in that room.
I wouldn't do nothing like that.
Pulled all her clothes out, as I remember, whatever.
No, I wouldn't do nothing like that.
It was just a deal, I guess, welcome them to the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the in-laws or somebody would fix it. A lot of times the couple didn't know they were coming,
Yeah.
but the in-laws would bring the treats in.
When Ernie and I married, a couple from the church had us in for supper. And what we didn't know, they was taking us in the wheelbarrow up to the church.
Sometimes they take the bride and lock her up like in a corn van, or, you know, sometimes it got kinda rough.
When now,
But
when
that-
Frank and Margaret was married, we went down there.
Yeah, but that was just family.
We tore all the labels off.
Got into the apartment, took all the labels off their
Oh, no.
can things.
Well, they get dog food, cat food.
They had to eat whatever they opened.